Hi there! Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I am a psychotherapist in Chicago and a very passionate spiritual seeker and healing seeker. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you. I wanted to thank you for being here because without you, this podcast wouldn't continue, probably. I mean, maybe I would just do it for myself, but it's pretty cool to hear that it really resonates with people and that I get feedback that it's really helpful. So that really warms my heart. I just had an interview I don't know when it's going to be released, but the person said that I was doing a service, and it's interesting to reflect on that and think about something that is really healing and helpful for me is also potentially helpful and healing for other people. So thank you. This is a relationship, whether we get to meet each other or not, and I just appreciate you and want you to know it. So thank you. And if you'd like to go one step further and continue appreciating, I did want to let you know about my Patreon page. So Patreon is basically a place where you can go and support podcasts like this. You can support other artists. All kinds of folks are on Patreon. And essentially what you do is you would make a monthly pledge, and it can be even as little as $1 a month. And it's just really nice because podcasting is free for you, but it's not cheap for me because I want it to sound really good. So any amount that anybody is willing to share, it is so appreciated. And if you share at the $5 a month level, you have an opportunity to chat with me more often. So there's a little incentive for you. So let me move on to today's guest. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. She's another therapist in Chicago. And, sometimes people are like, how do you find your guests? And I just kind of get an intuitive hit when I meet someone or see someone online. I just kind of get a hit that I'm supposed to chat with them. And Lauren is no exception to that rule. So Lauren McBride is the owner and founder of Healed and Whole Counseling Services. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor in Chicago. She specializes in serving the Black community to assist those with past trauma to find healing, as well as millennials to address relational issues, depression, anxiety, and adulting in general. So please enjoy my conversation with Lauren McBride. Hello, Lauren. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you. I'm excited. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. This is great. Yeah, normally not normally. What am I saying? I don't do anything in a normal way, but sometimes I have guests on here that I know really well. And sometimes I have guests on here who I know literally almost nothing about. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you post something on the Facebook group in Chicago? And then I was like, yeah, you just need to be on my podcast. I'm pretty sure that's what happened, right?
That's what happened, yes.
Good. So you're one of these new friends who I know nothing about, who I can't wait to hear everything about.
I'm excited. Same here.
Yay! So why don't you tell folks more about who you are and what you do?
Okay, no problem. My name is Lauren McBride. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor here in Chicago. I have an office in the South Loop where I meet with people for private practice. I have also done presentations for education purposes with NAMI of Metro Suburban. I've done 2 speaking engagements with them where I collaborated with other colleagues because I'm not an expert on everything.
What? You're not? Well, get off the show. I expected expert in all things.
So I've collaborated with some of my close colleagues that I admire personally and professionally. And I've organized these speaking engagements with NAMI of Metro Suburban, which have been great. And I've been very honored to even have been able to do these things to educate the community on mental health and specifically minority mental health. I did a speaking engagement this past February on strong Black women, or that notion of the strong Black woman. Mm-hmm. And I was also able to present this past July for minority mental health with NAMI. So those have been some great opportunities for me. I pretty much see in my private practice realm majority women who are minorities, specifically African American or Black, different sexual orientations, and a lot of them have presented with depression and anxiety, PTSD, and relational issues, specifically in regards to their mothers. So
shit.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a deep, deep thing. She, her.
Okay, so if I say, oh girl, okay.
Yes, that's totally fine.
Make sure that's cool.
Yes. Yes. I'd probably went off on a tangent about everything that I've done, but
that's exactly what we're here for. So I'm always curious the journey to becoming a therapist.
Yes.
You know, like when in your life were you like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a therapist. And then I do the little, push up my glasses thing. I'm going back to school. I'm really curious what that was like for you, and start wherever you want, but I love when people start back in childhood.
That's exactly where it started.
Bring it.
Yes, I was, 12, I think, when I was thinking about my journey of educational exploration, essentially. And I was having people ask me, like, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, well, I want to help people. So initially I thought, nurse, doctor, something to that derivative. And then I realized that blood, guts, feces, and urine are not things that I want to engage with on a daily basis.
You don't want to engage with poop?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't even want to do it with my poop. So no.
We get real deep real quick. I love it.
No, but I realized that, okay, so if I can't do that, then this is not for me.
Yep.
So I think I was like 14 or 15. And I was like, okay, so maybe I want to talk to people and help them on their journey, because full disclosure, I am a ward of the state, essentially.
Wow.
I grew up in the foster system. I was lucky to be with family.
Wow.
So it wasn't like, the traditional story that you hear, like, oh, you grew up in the system, so you went from house to house to house. Luckily, that was not my story. And I'm very, very thankful and grateful that it's not. However, there are still things that you deal with when you're not with, your mother or your father, and you grow up kind of feeling ostracized in a way because it's not my family. Although it was family,
Right.
So it's like kind of like that thing. And
but not your
like,
parents.
Right,
it's
exactly. It is totally different. Luckily, I was able to finally feel like, okay, I am, this person's child. But it did not happen until adulthood. So growing up, I just felt like not myself. It was very hard navigating not being with your parents and seeing my cousins, with their parent. And it's very difficult. So having that experience, I was like, I know that there are more people that are trying to navigate themselves, their identity, and being okay with not being okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, counseling it is.
Yeah.
so I can try to at least, help and understand and give people some sense of normalcy when it comes to this thing, because it nowadays it's kind of normal that people do not grow up with their parents for some reason. Because I feel like the millennial generation, we're very with the breaking generational curses, I guess you could say. So we're identifying. Exactly, that's the hope. Yes, this is the hope. Being very intentional with how we express ourselves in romantic relationships and when we do parent and how we parent. And so that's my journey.
That's amazing. Wow. That's really, really incredible. Did you grow up in Chicago?
I did.
Okay.
I grew up in Chicago.
So then we have also ridiculous amounts of segregation that you're dealing with, and obviously white supremacy and all those fun things.
Yes.
Wow. And where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign. So that's where I got my bachelor's of science in psychology, and I got my master's from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Okay. So I stayed local.
Yep.
Too afraid to go away.
Yeah. Well, okay, God, there's a million things I want to ask you about. Well, one of the things that you said that you work with clients on is working on this wound that comes with your mother. And so I'm curious what your experience was with that. Because like full disclosure on my end, we are recording this on my mother's 5th death anniversary. So it's funny, right before this, my mom recorded a bunch of tapes when we were little and they were transferred to CD. And I was just listening to one of the recordings and just like crying and just remembering like that little girl, that innocence of that little girl and the hope that my mom had of being able to raise me in a certain way.
Yeah.
And how it all didn't work, but I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm fine. But there's so much mother stuff. So I'm really curious, like your stuff and what you see with clients and how you're helping people work with that.
The first thing I try to do is get to the acceptance part, because once you can accept, it's pretty much gonna snowball into like the forgiveness and being able to understand them from their lens, that they weren't parented the correct ways, and seeing the generational and how the family system impacted the way that they were parenting. So it's pretty much all about education, psychoeducation.
My concern, and this is more of a general concern of things that I see in therapy, is like striving for acceptance. I fear sometimes invalidating people's experience, and the anger that really is warranted is very valid for a lot of people.
Oh, when I say like acceptance, it took one of my clients 8 months to finally get to that point. It does not come quickly. It's not going to be easy. I do not want to invalidate anybody's experience because I'm not in their shoes. And I see that a lot of the women that I see, they have these mother wounds, and it's very, very hard to navigate and explore. And the societal expectation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, societal expectation is that mothers could pretty much do no wrong.
Or they do everything wrong.
Either or.
Either or. The extreme.
Exactly. And sometimes mothers have mental health diagnosis, which makes them unable to parent correctly. They have trauma that they were unable to address because their mothers were not educated on how to, process these things with their children. So then this girl, essentially, because if the trauma happened when she was a young child, she's stunted at that trauma level or trauma age, and now she cannot parent correctly because she's still like 14 or whenever the trauma occurred. So it's like all of those different things, and helping them navigate, like, this is why your mother was not emotionally available to you, or how she showed love was not the way that you wanted her to show love. Like, her yelling and screaming, it's because she didn't know how to regulate her emotions. It's her drinking to excess, or her, using substances or heroin, whatever the case may be. It's because she had wounds that she was unable to heal from. And now you are, unfortunately, the victim of those wounds.
Right. Tell me what you think about this. I almost feel like acceptance and forgiveness are not one-time things, but they're processes that we continue to go through. And it's like, I always, at least for myself and for my clients, I want to be able to hold both at the same time, that there's grief about what I didn't get, there's anger about what I didn't get, and then at the same time there is also this understanding of, my mother had a trauma history as well, and so many reasons why she wasn't able to show up for me in certain ways, and holding those both at the same time. I think non-duality is such a hard thing for the human brain to do, but in my estimation, that seems to be what's almost necessary to move through these issues.
I agree 1,000% with you. It's both and.
Right.
It's not just one or the other. And I love the fact that you said that you have to continue to forgive, because they're still going to do things that may trigger you. And then you have to go back and be like, okay, my feelings are valid. This pissed me off. I'm going to take a step away and do what I need to do for myself, because I can only control myself. I cannot control this person. I've tried to educate. This person has not received it. So I'm going to continue to control myself and regulate myself and do what I need to do to keep myself safe.
Can I ask a personal question? And I'm going to ask it anyway, but you can just say you don't want to go into it, and we can delete this part if you don't want to. But do you have a relationship with your birth mother now?
I do. We literally had a breakthrough in September.
Wow. So
Yes.
this is very new.
Yes.
Wow.
Very, extremely new. And it was very difficult because, full transparency, when my clients were telling me what they were going through with their moms, I would go to my therapist and be like, this is so triggering for me because I'm a human person. I am like, I'm still trying to heal from these wounds. And then they're telling me about their wounds, and it's just like,
Yes.
So-
I was literally having a conversation with one of my staff members yesterday who was experiencing a trigger based on what the client was bringing in the room that was very much like a representation of her childhood. And I was like, you know what? That happens to me all the fucking time. And that is exactly what I do is I go to therapy and I'm like, okay, why is this client in my life right now?
Yes.
Like, what is what is it that I am being called to do? This person is a messenger for me, right? Oof. I love the clap. Yes.
Because my therapist, he brought it into perspective. He was like, well, look at your model or your motto for your private practice. He was like, these are the people that you're attracting. So of course you're going to continuously get the same things that you're looking for, essentially, you know? I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was like, the light bulb finally came on. Like, this is true.
And truthfully, I think any therapist who isn't honest about the fact that we specialize in areas where we need healing, like, if you're not honest about that, just get the fuck out, because I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and it's funny, like we don't necessarily go into it with that intention.
No, that was not the intention.
Right, but you figure it out later. You're like, oh, that's what I did. Yes, my soul is so cute.
Yes, all of the subconscious things that occur in our lives.
Yeah. So you see a male therapist.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Just for the continuity, because I'm seeing female therapists for the majority of my time in therapy. And I was in Memphis for a short time, and I saw a male therapist there, and I was like, okay, I feel like this is something that I need, because I grew up surrounded around women. Women's perspectives were all I heard. I had female friends. Like, I needed some testosterone in my life, essentially, to help guide me, because I already had so much, estrogen. I was like, no, I need somebody else from a different perspective, a different, gender, or just, biological sex, however we want to term it. And it's been very, very enlightening. Yeah.
How'd you find him? Because I think therapists for therapists can be really hard to find.
This is true. I actually found him through another colleague who sees him. So.
Oh, that's the best.
Yes. And I've referred friends to him. I've referred like other clients to him, and so forth and so on. Like, he's great.
That's the best. That's the best. Well, let's just kind of go into the question. Are you a healer?
I am. That's actually the name of my practice, Healed and Whole Counseling. So I do consider myself a healer.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about that, because I've asked this question nearly 100 times now, and it's so interesting to me, people's thought process behind it. Why some people say yes, why some people say no, and all of that. So why do you say yes? What's behind it?
I say yes because it's more than just like helping people navigate their thoughts or being able to implement like the self-care practices and things of that nature. Like, when you sit across from me, I always tell people I'm going to be your coach and your cheerleader at the same time. And when you're out there in the field, I want to make sure that I provide you with the tools necessary to bring forth the change that you want to see. Because clearly you came here for a purpose. And I want to make sure that we work as a team with this purpose that you have identified and succeed. So I tell them a lot of the things that I've done to help me heal, which is actually funny how I came up with the name for my practice, because when I was in Memphis, at the end of every journal entry, I will put healed and whole is the goal.
I love that.
Right. So,
well, that's the name of this episode. I'm writing that down now.
And I really resonated with that, because I felt so broken, and I felt like I had so many wounds, and I was like so intentional and so purposeful, and I was like, I got to get this done because I want to live the very best life I can live, because you only get one. So this is why I believe that I'm a healer. I'm about being non-judgmental, helping you on your journey. However, I will also challenge you. I always tell people of that. Like, I'm not going to just sit here and pacify. You are entitled to how you feel at all times because your feelings are valid. I am also going to tell you what behavioral changes that you may want to make for different outcomes.
Right. Well, what gets in the way of you being your healed and whole self, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I love that. Healed and whole is the goal.
Yes.
Oh, do you think we ever get there?
I do. I think it's an ongoing process because things are going to happen. Life happens. You feel mentally exhausted, emotionally exhausted. You get burnt out from your job. All of these different things happen. You have a parent who's ill. You have a child that's sick, and if you don't make rent in time, things are going to happen. It's just, how do you bounce back? It's that resiliency factor. So what tools do you have in your toolbox? And it's not just about doing them when things happen. It's about doing them on a regular basis. So that could be your go-to instead of the anger or the fighting or the cursing somebody out.
Yeah, I work mostly in addiction, and that's the thing that is most surprising to people. They're like, wait, I'm not just going to like wake up one day and everything's going to be fine. I'm like, no, you dummies, you got to practice this shit every day.
Every day. So then it can become second nature. I don't think that you would.
I'm telling the audience because actually I probably have called a client a dummy at some point, only when we have a really good relationship and we know it's a joke.
Right.
So I'm really curious, and I don't know why this is coming to me right now. So it could be there's nothing there, or it could be there's something really exciting to explore there. But I'm curious your spiritual beliefs and what you were raised with, and then how that informs your life now or doesn't.
I grew up going to church with my grandmother when I would visit her on the weekends. It was a Baptist church. So no cursing, of course. You can't say shoot, heck, or anything that sounded like a curse
Grandma,
word.
Come on.
And like, she always wore dresses or skirts. She never wore pants because it's in the Bible that you cannot wear. So like, this is like,
what? No, that shit is not in the Bible.
That's what she told me.
Grandma, that shit is not in the Bible. I promise. I've read that too. That's what I grew up hearing. And then when I wasn't with my grandmother on, her weeks that she would have me, I pretty much didn't go to church. However, I did get baptized when I was, how old was I? 13 or 14 with my cousin who I grew up with. We went to the church that was like a block or two away. And we both just got baptized. It was like a random Wednesday. It was like totally random. And I didn't really understand why I was doing it at that time. And then I got baptized again by my best friend's grandmother in her home. Wow.
She had some holy water. And then at that point, I felt like the spiritual presence, like where I was like crying. And I was like, wow, I really gave my life to, Jesus and God.
And how old were you then?
I was about 15. Yeah. So at that point, it really resonated with me. I do not go to church currently. I have not stepped into a church in a few years.
I detect a little something in there. Is there any familial pressure to be doing that, or some sort of message that like only spiritual people go to church, or you have to go to church to be spiritual?
A little bit.
A little bit, just maybe.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing to navigate because I read the Bible on my own.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, it's on my phone.
So let me know when you get to the
Bible
part.
App.
Let me know when you get to the part about girls wearing skirts.
Okay,
go on.
I will let you know. No, but if you ask another like different denominations, they will tell you like you're not supposed to. Women do not wear pants.
Right.
And I don't. Hey.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's something in there that alluded to it, but I'm pretty sure God didn't say women can't wear pants.
There are a lot of things that are alluded to in the Bible.
Is this an okay topic to explore? Because it feels like there's a lot of charge here.
We can talk about it. It's very, in the African American community, Black community, like church is a high standard.
Yeah.
And it's like a must do. It's not an option.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the stuff I'd really love to hear about, because I think that's the richness of the transformations that our generations are making right now is, right? We
Yeah.
are making different decisions. Like, we can hold some of the spiritual traditions that we were raised with
Yes.
reverence and not engage with them. And then internally, what I feel like I'm hearing you go through right now is this recognition of the pressure, the cultural pressure that comes with that. Whatever it is that your culture says is what you do, and you don't do it, then there's that internal, like, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. And it's a lot to navigate, especially
I
in
can
this
imagine.
day and age, because you don't want to disappoint parents, grandparents, and you also want to be true to yourself, because there are a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with when it comes to the standard church. I'm using air quotes when I say standard church.
Right.
So that's why I practice it the way that I do, where I'm more of a spiritual person, where I can read the Bible and understand it and put my perspectives into it. And I also understand that I don't have to necessarily go to a building for the spiritual richness that I can get on my own. And also, like, if I have a conversation with friends, family, colleagues, in the Bible it says, when 3 or more are gathered. So
Right. Yeah.
I just try to do like those types of things where we have these conversations and there's no pressure and we could be open and honest, because I feel that there's a lot of, some people may hear this and then they're like, oh my goodness, how dare she? And again, that's that shame and that guilt. And it's like, it's so hard to navigate, but I'm true to myself. And I know that I have a relationship with God, which may not be the same as another person who goes to church every week or who attends Bible study or what have you. I respect everybody's religion. I respect everybody's perspective on religion.
Right.
This is mine.
Yeah. Well, and a couple things I'm thinking about. So historically, we know that at least the Catholic Church started out wanting to put someone in between God and the people, because then that would make room for individualist expression. And at the time, people who were in power, white people, wanted to control everyone. And so that's part of where that comes from. And this idea of, we can cultivate our own connection with God, and then it looking a different way can be very threatening, because if we have all these individuals running around with their individual ideas, we're not going to be, there's fear that we're not going to be falling in line. We're not going to be like doing things right. My mom always kind of had this like, well, if you don't do what the Bible says, then you're on the path to hell. And it's like, well, there's a little space between doing everything like Jesus and going to hell.
Right. Exactly.
And it's just, that's how people can use religion as a weapon, which is so not what Jesus taught.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And this, back in, the 1800s when slavery was prominent, that's exactly what they used the Bible for. And many African Americans now, Black people, they prefer the Islamic religion over Christianity. Not saying it's like 50-50. I'm not saying that, but many of them practice, going to, is it the mosque?
Is it? Yeah, I think so.
Yes, the mosque. And,
listen to us both being ignorant on,
right, no,
on Islam.
I know, I'm
Great.
so sorry. So sorry to anybody of the Islam faith.
Well, hopefully I can interview someone and they can learn a little bit more.
Exactly. And, I don't eat pork because I was actually with someone who practiced the Islamic faith. So I saw, him pray and do the traditions and go to mosque and so forth and so on. And to this day, I still don't eat pork, but for different reasons. However, like that started me on that path. And I can see, why people of African American descent do not resonate with Christian faith. And it's because they use it as a weapon during slavery. So why continue this mind controlled type of, because it affected our lineage. So that would make sense why some people may divert to different things, and why that's probably what subconsciously maybe why I practice my faith the way in which I do. And I'm a spiritual person.
And two, that's also making me curious about, this idea that, Black people are like, well, you have to go to church, you have to do it this one way. My guess would be is that during the time of slavery, that may have been the only place where they would have felt free to express themselves in the way
True.
that they actually authentically were. So I wonder if that's kind of part of it, this desire to continue to hold that space.
It's both and, exactly.
Right.
It was used as a tool for mind control, essentially, and it was a way for community agency within, the slaves or in that particular area to gather and, sing, which is like fun to do. And if you're, a slave, you don't really have that many fun options, essentially. So, it's so convoluted and it's hard to navigate, and you have a point.
Well, and since we're on the topic of race, if it's okay to kind of go there, I'm curious. I've been starting to do, probably for, I guess, like a year and a half now, starting to do my own anti-racism work and really trying to get in touch with understanding whiteness and understanding white supremacy and all of that. And I have a couple amazing people of color in my life who are sharing their experiences with me. And, one of the things that is so difficult is finding enough therapists of color for the people of color to go see.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if for any people of color out there who might be listening who are like, I really want a therapist who is of color, how do you suggest finding a good fit? Do you have thoughts about how we attract more therapists of color into the field and anything else along those lines?
Yeah. When it comes to finding a therapist who is African American, Caribbean, Jamaican, because there's a lot of different things that people, specifically want. There is a listing. It's called Therapy for Black Girls. It's women, but that's just a way to get started. They also have a directory, Therapy for Black Men. But the directory is still up and coming, so it's kind of hard for that list. And it's also just when you find someone who is licensed clinical professional counselor, licensed clinical social worker, PhD, PsyD, whatever they may be, and they're in the field, just take their card. And if you don't, necessarily want to speak with them because you have a relationship with them, then ask them if they know anybody in the field. So it's like the referral source, essentially, because there is a small pot of African American clinicians in the Chicagoland area. So that's how I would pretty much explore it. And also just asking your friends, like, do you go to therapy? I know that it may be very, very hard to do. That's also a way just to get what you need, is to ask questions.
Can I actually ask a question around that too? Because, culturally overall, and when I say that, now I'm recognizing that actually might just mean white people, but I'm seeing a shift in the stigma of therapy, and especially with millennials are more vocal about it. Do you also see that with the Black community, or do you think that there's still that, like, do not tell anybody outside of this house?
With the millennials, I would say people 40 and under, they're more vocal. I would say that they're more vocal. Not to say that, all 41 and up people are not saying that
every single one.
Right,
41
exactly.
and up. Right. Every single one.
but from my stance, like, even I've seen people like come to the same office and see, like as peers, friends, what have you, and then they would go see their prospective therapist. And it's so great to see that, not only to see like two African American people going to therapy, but two African American clinicians providing therapy. So it's just like that is so great and so profound, and it's very, very, very good to see. As far as recruiting, it's hard to recruit. I will say that, because when you first get started in the field, many of us do not make a lot of money. Right. So it's very hard for you to tell someone to spend, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education, and then they come out making $30,000 a year. They're like, who told me to do this?
Right, right.
Yep. So that's that's hard.
They'll be like,
and,
Lauren,
right, exactly.
You led me astray.
Exactly. I'm like, you know what? It's just the first few years, and then once you're licensed, the sky is the limit, which it is. It's the good, the bad, and ugly. Every career has it. Yeah. And that's unfortunately the ugly part is the pay when you first start off. The good part is like seeing the changes in your clients. Like no matter how big, how small they are, it's so profound. And I'm like super excited. Like when they're like, okay, so this happened, but I was able to use the progressive muscle relaxation technique that you taught me. And I'm like, oh my God, when we were in session, you didn't look like you bought into it, but I'm so happy that you used it and it worked. And that's so great. And that's the good, to see that change. And then the ugly is the paperwork and insurance, but we all know about that. So
fuck that shit. That's a whole other podcast.
So yeah,
I'm just interested in burning it to the ground.
I know. It's so yeah.
Well, let me share my experience with you as a professor and get your personal thoughts on this. My friends who have blessed me with their POC perspective are so kind and so generous with me to like hold space for me to discern like what is my own white fragility versus like what is an actual issue. So what I noticed last semester, so I teach an online master's program, and I find the students who show up for that are often either career changers or people who have like non-traditional schedules, or a lot of times I'm finding students going straight from their bachelor's through to get the master's.
Yes.
So for me, I'm really talking about the young people, because this is where it's really coming up for me, is that so I had a situation with a student where they weren't meeting the expectations that were set, like, showing up on time, contributing to class discussion, right? All these little check marks. I'm also very, very aware that academia is a white value system, and a lot of these things are not the values of the Black community or Hispanic or whatever other communities. And I find myself in this place where, as a professor, I feel like my hands are tied because I have to hold these students to a certain standard set by the university. And my fear is that if a student isn't able to adhere to some of those things, but then they get to pass through anyway, I don't know if they're equipped to really be able to support people in their journey. But at the same time, I want to create more space for people of color to come into this field. And this is definitely not even just about people of color, but there was one incident last semester that it happened to be a Black student, and they were struggling with some outside issues that really got in the way. And I'm like, how the fuck do I do this? How do we shift academia? And do we, there's just so many pieces of this and that's where my white fragility kicks in, because then I just feel guilty, and then, I'm like doing backflips and all the codependency shows up. So it's like, it's just such a complex issue. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have.
Actually, I have a colleague who is associate dean at the Chicago School online campus.
Oh, cool.
And this is something that she has spoken to me about, that she's trying to navigate, because this is a big issue where it's not just like for the first gen African American, whatever race it may be, first gen student on campus or online, that it's not just I'm going to go to school and I'm going to go to work. It's like, and I also have some siblings that I have to take care of, and my mom who's an alcoholic or, drug addict, that I'm, trying to help her navigate through her sobriety. And I have a grandmother whose foot just got amputated because she has diabetes, and I'm trying to help her. Like, it's so many different things that you feel weighed on you, and it's hard to navigate that and then say I'm still showing up for school. Like that's like the last thing. It's like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like school is like, fuck that. Like I need to make sure that my family's okay, and that is so hard and difficult for somebody to navigate. And you don't want to feel like you're being selfish, and you're like, well, mom or sister or brother, whomever, I cannot provide you with the support that you need right now because I have a paper that's due. And if it's late, then I get docked 10 points. So, it's so hard, especially for women, because we have so many things that we're supposed to do.
So many roles.
Yes, yes. Like sister, mother, daughter, wife, cousin, auntie. It's so many different things. And this is something I'm very passionate about because there is a coined term called the sisterella complex.
Do say more.
Yes. It's coined by, I hope I don't butcher her name, but I believe it's Sharice Jones and Dr. Shorter Gooden. And this is from a book called Shifting, The Double Lives Black Women in America. And the sisterella complex is a functional depression experienced by Black women that is influenced by the obligation of strength and characterized by selflessness and self-silencing in an effort to defy stereotypes and appear strong.
Yeah.
It's so embodying of what Black women experience on a regular basis and have experienced for generations.
Yes.
This is like the strong Black woman.
Yeah.
And then I actually saw a meme, and I don't like to believe memes all that much. But
I love memes. Bring it.
But the meme was so powerful. It said, you do not need to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm.
Oh,
and
fuck.
I wanted to. Woo. I was like, yep, this is true. But so many times I have set myself on fire.
Right.
Many times. And it's very hard to navigate this. So short answer, I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
because it's so hard.
I would love to talk to your friend if you
would
connect us, because I think it's so funny. Whenever I don't have a community of people to talk to about a certain issue, I just try to create one. And so maybe we need to create a little coalition of people in academia who are bumping up against some of these themes and want to just have discussions about what do you do with it, right? Or even just get some fucking empathy, right? Because I just, I can sit over here and feel like an asshole. I can feel like I am then tethered to this stupid system that isn't working for everybody, and I can feel helpless and hopeless, or I can talk to somebody about it and we can support each other through it.
Yes, I think that you two would be great together.
Oh my God. And maybe I should interview her for the podcast.
You should.
Oh my God, I love new friends. This is why the podcast has changed my life in such an amazing way. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. So I realize now I asked you about the healer question, but I didn't ask you about the wounded healer question. So we should probably backtrack and pick that up. So do you consider yourself a wounded healer?
Yes. Yeah. I'm a wounded healer. I've had to heal my own wounds, and I'm still healing many to be able to do what I do every day. And it's, again, what did I say? Keep lighting myself on fire.
Right.
So it's very hard to navigate, but I try to make sure that I implement self-care daily, weekly, monthly, just to make sure that I maintain myself, because I'm the only one responsible for my mental health. So yeah. Well,
and because one of the things that I've been really tuning into lately is, we can say self-care a trillion times, and for some people they're like, oh, okay, go get a massage and take bubble baths and blah 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 blah. And some things are self-care, but some things are really community care and bigger, like really bigger things, like if we all had access to equal health care, and shit like that is like way bigger than us. And again, like that's where I personally start feeling very hopeless, is around like the healthcare system. Like we said earlier, insurance fucking sucks.
Yes.
Like I've got 2 clients who are going to treatment right now, and they needed a benefactor to pay for treatment because insurance doesn't pay for it. A lot of people don't understand how insurance works for, like, if you're going to a residential facility, insurance doesn't want to pay for it. They'll pay very, very, very little, which is why a lot of treatment centers are actually out of network, because to provide quality care, it fucking costs money.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that's it, And I've been having talks with people who want to open treatment centers, and I'm like, you need money. And that's the problem, is that some of these places then get privatized, or they're in these like for-profit companies, and then it becomes all about the money. So it's this like, I don't even know, why did I start talking about that? Oh, structural care. So like we just need to change the system, and I'm tired.
It's a lot of different. It's a lot of moving parts. It's so many moving parts. It's lack of access lack of transportation, lack of childcare, so many different things that can impact you just doing what you should do. I use air quotes. What you should do.
Right. Well, what every human being should be entitled to is what that is.
Yeah.
And, just thinking about how tired I feel with this shit, it's like, this is only a fraction of what people of color have to go through in terms of like pushing through white supremacy every fucking day.
Yeah.
And all of that shit that needs to be changed.
Yeah, when Obamacare came about, I thought that it was going to be something different than what it turned out to be. Because I've heard of like universal health care in Canada and Europe. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be so amazing. Everybody's going to have health care. And then it's like, not quite.
Not exactly how it works.
Right, exactly. So again, I was young, and I am glad that a lot more people have access to care with Medicaid, which is great. People who are, homeless, don't have an income or have little income because they get, SSI checks of $771 a month. Like, what is that going to do? And if you were to have health insurance, then that would be $200 a month on top of food and clothes and bills and rent. So I am very happy that Medicaid has expanded and opened up to a lot more people. It's still a lack of resources and providers to provide services to them, because I don't even accept HMO.
Of course. Right.
So
we can't. It's like we can only do so much.
Right.
It's small businesses really. I don't think people really understand how expensive it is to have a small business.
It is extremely expensive. I look at my what is it? QuickBooks self-employed. I'm like, barely making it, but I'm making it. Like that's literally what I do.
Right. Like I would love to be able to accept Medicaid and provide services. I'm a fucking social worker. Like that's why I got into this, but I can't from a business perspective. Or I'd be running to the ground and then nobody would get the help.
Exactly. Yes. So I try to offer as many sliding scale spaces that I can. And unfortunately, if it's a PPO or person who is able to pay out of pocket, I take them. And it's so hard because I do want to be able to provide services to other people and people who cannot afford it. If I can get a grant where I could see people of color, that would be amazing. I've actually looked at that. I was like, how can I be able to service more people like me?
There's a thing there.
Hard. Yeah.
There's a thing there.
Yeah.
I wonder if enough people got together.
This is true. This is very true.
Well, this has been a fabulous discussion, and clearly now we're best friends. But where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you?
Yes, my website is www.healedandwholecounseling.com. You can find me on Instagram at Healed and Whole Counseling, Facebook, Healed and Whole Counseling Services, LLC. And they could also give me a call if they want to chat.
Don't give them your number. Don't give them on this.
Okay.
One day when you don't want them to call you, they'll hear this podcast and be like, I'm going to give her a call. And you're like, what? Yeah. Website and email are good. Yeah.
Website.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'll post all this stuff obviously too with the show notes and whatnot so people can get in touch with you. But I'm so glad that we met, and I appreciate the really honest and vulnerable conversation.
I appreciate it. And thank you for giving me the space to share.
Hell yeah.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
You got it. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Lauren, for that conversation. It was so wonderful and so great to have you on the show. To find out more information about Lauren, you can go to our website at www.headhearttherapy.com/podcast. And join her on all the social medias. Be her friend like you're my friend. That'd be amazing. I'm sure she wants to talk to you. Right, Lauren? Right? Well, thanks as always to Andrea at the Creative Imposter Studios for editing and producing, to Liam O'Donnell for the album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Thanks so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.